Imagine waking up in a world where you do not know what germs are. You have never heard the word virus. You have no doctor, no hospital, no antibiotics, no vaccine, not even the language to explain why the healthy man who laughed with you by the fire 2 days ago is now burning with fever and coughing blood into the dirt. You cannot test the water. You cannot sanitize your hands. You cannot call for help. All you know is that something invisible has entered the camp, and once it does, people start dropping fast. Now, here is the question. How did ancient humans survive that? Seriously, think about how insane this is. For thousands of years, human beings lived surrounded by infection. Rotting meat, dirty water, parasites, animal bites, contaminated wounds, smoke-filled shelters, freezing nights, close contact with livestock later on, and absolutely no modern medicine. By all logic, we should have been erased over and over again, and yet we were not. We are here. The answer is not that ancient humans were healthier in some magical way, and it is definitely not that pandemics simply did not exist until modern civilization. Disease is ancient. Pathogens are ancient. The thing that changed over time was not whether disease existed, it was how far it could spread, how fast it could move, and how many people it could reach before running out of bodies. That difference is everything. Start with the first layer, and it is the one most people get wrong. For most of human history, humans did not live packed together. They lived in small bands. A few families here, another group over the ridge, another one days away. That matters, because deadly epidemics need fuel. They need bodies. They need contact. They need density. A virus that explodes through a city has a very different life than a disease trying to move through 25 people who can pick up their things and disappear into the landscape by sunrise. In other words, ancient humans survived many outbreaks because they were hard to find. They were not stationary targets. They were scattered, mobile, and thinly distributed. A sickness could absolutely devastate one camp. It could kill children, elders, hunters, mothers. But then it would hit a wall. No roads, no ports, no crowded markets, no apartment blocks, no schools, no factories, no trains. A disease can be deadly and still fail if there are not enough nearby hosts to keep it alive. That is the first brutal truth. Ancient disease was often local before it was global. It burned hot, then ran out of humans. But that does not mean early humans were safe. It means the survivors learned patterns before they understood the causes. This is the second layer. Ancient people did not know germ theory, but they knew observation. They knew that some places made people sick. They knew some bodies should not be touched the same way. They knew some water was wrong. They knew some seasons brought death with them. They knew when a camp felt cursed. And sometimes what looked like superstition was actually crude public health. This happens far more often in human history than modern people like to admit. People discover what works long before they discover why it works. If smoke keeps insects away, you use smoke. If moving camp after a cluster of deaths seems to help, you move. If certain bodies are buried fast and kept away from the group, you bury fast. If a coughing stranger shows up and then 3 children fall sick, next time, you do not let the stranger sleep close to the fire. That is not ignorance. That is pattern recognition under extreme pressure. Now, add the third layer. Ancient humans lived close to fire, and fire did more than keep them warm. Smoke drives away insects. Heat changes food safety. Boiling changes water. Drying and roasting reduce some kinds of pathogen load. None of this makes ancient life sterile. Not even close, but it shifts the odds. And survival, especially before medicine, is often just odds management stretched across generations. Then there is mobility, which may be one of the greatest anti-pandemic technologies our species ever had. If your group notices the water source is fouled, you leave. If game disappears and carcasses start drawing scavengers, you leave. If too many people are getting sick in one place, you leave. Sedentary civilization makes enormous achievements possible, but it comes with a cost. Once you tie yourself to fields, walls, grain stores, and livestock pens, you lose the ancient luxury of simply walking away from danger.
Once you tie yourself to fields, walls, grain stores, and livestock pens, you lose the ancient luxury of simply walking away from danger. And this is where the story turns. Because when agriculture arrives, disease changes character. Population density rises. People begin living with domesticated animals. Waste accumulates. Water becomes easier to contaminate. Trade routes link distant settlements.
Suddenly, pathogens do not have to die with one village. They can travel, they can adapt, they can come back. The archaeological and historical record becomes much darker here, because now you start getting the real ingredients of pandemic behavior. Crowding, contact, permanence, movement, repetition. We even have ancient DNA showing that plague was already infecting humans thousands of years before the famous medieval outbreaks. Early forms of plague appear in Bronze Age human remains long before the Black Death, which means invisible mass killers were already moving through ancient populations while nobody had the faintest idea what a bacterium was. That should unsettle you a little. The enemy was ancient before history even properly began. So, if ancient humans had no medicine, what actually kept them alive? Another layer. Social care. Humans are not solitary survivors. A wounded wolf is in trouble. A sick human, if the group chooses to carry them, feed them, cool them, isolate them, and protect their children, suddenly has a chance. Survival was communal. Someone fetched water. Someone kept the fire going. Someone watched the children of the fevered mother. Someone stayed awake through the night listening to the breathing of the injured hunter. You do not need a hospital for care to exist. You just need other humans who refuse to let you die alone. And that matters because many infections are not instantly fatal. A person does not always need a cure. Sometimes they need time, fluids, warmth, food, and enough support to outlast the worst of it. Ancient humans, for all their vulnerability, were extremely good at cooperative survival. We know this because skeletal remains show individuals who lived for years with serious injuries and disabilities. They could never have survived without group assistance. The same species that painted caves and crossed continents also kept the weak alive. That is part of the disease story, too. Then there is the layer nobody can see directly, but everyone alive carries inside them: selection. Pathogens have been shaping human genetics for an absurdly long time, long enough that your immune system is basically a battlefield archive. Ancient DNA and modern genomics both point to the same ruthless fact. Diseases killed people, and the ones with slightly better defenses were more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those defenses on. Not perfect immunity, not invincibility, just a slightly better chance. And if you repeat that process across thousands of years, across countless outbreaks, famines, migrations, and childhood fevers, you get us. Some protective traits may have roots so old they reach back tens of thousands of years. Even interbreeding with archaic humans like Neanderthals appears to have contributed useful immune variants to later populations. Think about what that means. Part of your disease survival kit may have been assembled before recorded history, borrowed from other human lineages, sharpened by epidemics nobody wrote down, and handed to you through bodies that survived by fractions. But we also need to be honest. Many ancient humans did not survive. Entire groups may have vanished without leaving a story anyone could tell. A lethal outbreak in a small community does not become a famous pandemic in a history book if nobody is left to write about it. It just disappears into the ground. Bone, ash, silence. The archaeological record is full of absence, and absence can hide catastrophe. That is why the real question is not why ancient humans never faced deadly pandemics. They did. The real question is why the species survived repeated microbial assaults at all. And the answer, once you strip away the romance, is almost shockingly practical. They survived because they were dispersed before they were dense. They moved before they settled. They noticed patterns before they knew science. They used fire before they understood sanitation. They cared for each other before they had medicine. And over immense stretches of time, natural selection kept rewriting the immune system of the survivors. So the deepest answer is this.
Ancient humans did not defeat pandemics the way modern medicine tries to defeat them. They outlasted them, sometimes by distance, sometimes by luck, sometimes by instinct, sometimes by care, sometimes by losing enormous numbers of people and continuing anyway. That is darker than the heroic version, but it is also more true. And there is one last layer to this that is almost disturbing in its scale. The body you are living in right now is not a pre-disease body, it is a post-disease body. Your immune system was not designed in peace, it was built in crisis. It was shaped by waves of infection so old that history forgot their names. The people who made it through those waves became your ancestors. The ones who did not, did not.
So the next time you hear the word pandemic and your mind jumps only to modern hospitals, modern masks, modern science, remember this. The first human beings who survived invisible killers had none of that. What they had was movement, memory, fire, caution, community, and a biology forged in the most merciless selection pressure on Earth. Disease has been hunting us for as long as we have been human. The reason you are here is that, somehow, enough of us kept surviving anyway.